Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, if this isn't welcome back, please make sure to subscribe using the big red button down below. It helps us more than you can believe, and we're really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2022. Can you help us make that happen? Click the button below. Now, game week 2 has been and gone, meaning that we have a new 5 things that we've learned in the Premier League. So up first, we're going to be focusing on Everton and Aston Villa, as this game provided us with a look into how this competition between Villa and Everton and Lampard and Gerrard was going to pan out. So looking at the stats, it looks like Aston Villa had a lot of pressure throughout the majority of the game. However, Everton were also able to get quite a few shots away. But the problem with this is that the shots weren't taken in areas that were of great quality. Yes, the majority of them were inside the box, but the majority of those were also blocked. So this is just reinforcing the idea that Frank Lampard really does need a striker or someone that can lead the line confidently to provide Everton with someone to look for, someone that can get them out of tough situations, and really someone that they can look to as they want to progress and hopefully stay in the Premier League this year. Although from the 2 games we've seen already, they do look like they're struggling a little bit, and I think they're going to get pulled into another relegation battle. I really do. And I think it's going to take something a lot more special this time, given that Richarlison has gone to Spurs. And I think that they need that striker, but who that's going to be, we really don't know. And it doesn't look like there's much movement on that front. And interestingly, a report came out last night that Anthony Gordon was subject of a bid from Chelsea. And if they get him, who is there to look for in that Everton side? Dwight McNeil, yeah, he's okay, but where are the goals going to come from? Calvert-Lewin's injured for another 5 weeks, and it's going to be a tough time for Everton in the next few match weeks of the Premier League. Focusing on Aston Villa and the result, I think it's something that Gerrard really needed. I was watching the game, and the commentator said prior to kickoff, who was this more important for? And it was definitely for Gerrard, as he was at home, and he really needed a result to pick them up after their defeat to Bournemouth last time out. However, as good as the result is, they do now have an issue with Diego Carlos having an Achilles tendon injury, and how long this keeps him out for, we don't know at this stage, but we wish him a speedy recovery. So what do we take from this result? Well, I think that Everton are in trouble, and I think that they're going to need reinforcements in the calibre that they haven't brought in yet. And whether this happens before the end of the window in a few weeks' time, that will shape how their season pans out. Moving down to London, and Spurs versus Chelsea was a phenomenal game on Sunday evening. It was a game of 2 halves, really. And the way in which Spurs played in the first half was so counterintuitive of how they want to play. They had no presence. Chelsea bossed them around. They played them off the park in the first 45. And that changed significantly into the second half, where Chelsea had all these chances and yet they couldn't score. And with Timo Werner gone, with Lukaku gone, who do they look for now? They have Raheem Sterling, a fantastic signing, but is that enough? Do they need an out-and-out number 9? I think they might do. And we saw what the impact of a out-and-out number 9 can do for your team when Harry Kane equalised in the 90+6th from a corner that shouldn't have been a corner. It was a clear foul in the box on Cucurella before that corner was given. I don't know why VAR didn't intervene. It's strange. It's very strange. But at the end of the day, there's a point apiece for the teams, and based on the way the halves played out, I think that's fair. I think Chelsea did so well in the first half. They could have been further ahead. That Koulibaly strike was incredible. But they're relying on these defenders to get them goals. They're relying on set pieces to get them goals. And that shouldn't be how football is played. You need your forwards, you need your midfielders to pitch in. And when that's not happening, you can see how it impacts the game in the latter stages when you have a team that do have a forward line, that do have people that can make a difference up the top of the pitch. So what do we take away from this? As well as Spurs played, I don't think they're the finished article that many fans and pundits thought they were at the start of the season. I do think there's still fallibility in there, and I do think they need a little bit more in order to be considered as going for the title. I do think they have another very good season. I still think they win something, but I just don't think it's going to be the title winning season that a lot of people got a little bit carried away with before the season started. Looking at the game that saw out Saturday, and what an unbelievable performance for Brentford. I had my doubts about how well they could play given that Eriksen had left, but they don't need him, do they? and United certainly do. There was so much you could say about Manchester United being bad that there hasn't been the time to praise Brentford for how good they were. But if we do look at United, there is a slump that's starting to appear. You've got players that don't look like they want to be there, and Ronaldo is really starting to make himself look bad in the way he's acting on the pitch, the way he's acting after the game, and I think we're going to see a rift start to appear between him and Erik ten Hag. So looking at that game, first goal, error from De Gea, easily preventable. De Gea is such a difficult case because he was a phenomenal goalkeeper, but these errors have started to creep into his game more consistently now, and I'm starting to think maybe letting Dean Henderson go to Nottingham Forest wasn't the right call, and maybe he should have stayed as a backup if you've got a goalkeeper that isn't going to be consistently good. I think that the second goal showed that there's a naivety in the way that the Manchester United players are trying to adapt to the way that Erik ten Hag wants to play, and that trying to play out from the back is something that these players just haven't had the time to be accustomed to. And I know that sounds ridiculous because they're Premier League players, but the way that Erik ten Hag has an idea and an identity is so different to Ralf Rangnick and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So it's not on him. It's definitely not on Erik ten Hag. It's definitely on the players. But at the same time, you've got criticism for the owners who haven't bought the right players in the eyes of the fans. I'm 50-50 on this criticism. Yes, that is the case, but they have also spent £1 billion. That's a lot of money. And I understand this doesn't come from their pockets, but comes from the club. And that's not fantastic. But it's better than spending nothing at all and not buying these players for 80 million, for 50 million. It's a lot of money, but I think maybe they need to be targeting the right players in the right areas rather than going for people that can just be a stopgap in their way of trying to change the club. The third goal in the game, I think we always knew there was going to be this battle whenever a physical side come up against Martinez due to his stature, and we were just proven right as fans that maybe having a centre half that's under 6 foot isn't quite how you need to have your defence lining up in the Premier League, one of the most physical leagues on the planet. And him getting out jumped by Ben Mee really brought home the idea that, okay, maybe this isn't right, but at the same time, there's time. He can adapt. Of course he can adapt to the Premier League. I can't rule out someone after 2 matches, maybe playing in a different position or maybe just adapting in general will lead to Martinez's success in the Premier League. However, we're going to have to wait and see if this comes into fruition. So what do we take away? Well, the bees are buzzing. After their comeback against Leicester and this game against Manchester United, confidence must be an all-time high. Can they go for Europe? I don't think so. Moving up to the Premier League new boys in Nottingham Forest, and wow, what a result against West Ham. But this is interesting for West Ham now. How do you come back from 2 defeats on the bounce? It's difficult for any team to do, but I think they've got the calibre to do it. However, we're going to focus on Forest here. An interesting game. They had so much energy in the first 20 minutes and they were going and getting chances consistently. And then West Ham got into a little bit more and it was more open. And then scoring as they did, maybe not the cleanest of strikes, but I'll let Taiwo Awoniyi comment on that one. But I think that they just look energetic. And I think it's exactly what Steve Cooper would have wanted to see, because he's replaced so many of that starting 11 and so many of the squad members. And they're gelling a little bit quicker than I thought they would. I think that's a good sign. Whether they stay up, I think they might just, but I know a lot of people still think they'll go down. Interestingly, another thing to take away from this game is VAR's influence. I think that the Antonio foul is very 50-50. A lot of people think that Mangala ran the other way to block Antonio, therefore it's obstruction, therefore it should be a free kick the other way before the goal that was chalked off for Benrahma. However, there have been a few incidences of VAR this week being a little bit suspect at the best of times. So I think, again, not to get drawn on the use of technology in the game, but I do think it needs to be improved. As I said in the video I made a few months ago, VAR is not quite up to scratch, not because it doesn't work, but because the officials behind it don't quite understand how to use it correctly. So what did we learn? Well, we learned that Forest are good enough to stay and play in the Premier League, and I, as I've mentioned before, think that they do stay up this season, and I think they could be quite an exciting watch for the majority of Premier League fans. Now, the final point of what we learned in game week 2 is that Liverpool might not quite be there this season. And that's something that shocks me, as I predicted them to win each of their first 5 games. But something doesn't seem right, and I'm not sure what it is. I think there's a multitude of factors that it could be. Firstly, looking at the way in which the squad have been together for so long, maybe they feel complacent, maybe they feel like their places aren't under threat because the lack of new players that have been brought in isn't giving competition which they need. Arguably, it could also be due to formation changes. Nothing's changed there either. So maybe a new approach needs to be taken by Klopp and the Liverpool team in order to get the best out of these players moving forward. Obviously in the game, Crystal Palace scored first, which is not different to what we've seen from Liverpool. They've conceded first in their last 6 games in the Premier League, which is dreadful when you think about it. And then obviously replying through Luis Diaz only after Darwin Núñez received a red card for a headbutt on Joachim Andersen. Awful, disgusting. I don't think there's any place for that in the modern game at all. And if anything, it kind of showed this naivety, this sort of nature to Darwin that maybe he needs to grow out of if he's to become a success at Liverpool. So what have we learnt? Well, we've learnt that Liverpool need to adapt in order to move forward and to compete for the title again. Otherwise, I think this could be an underwhelming season for the majority of Liverpool fans. Finally, just like last week, I was also paying attention to my FPL this week. And I think the main person that you should put in your FPL squad is Mbeumo from Brentford. He's hit form, starting to play really, really well for the side, and I think that he's got a lot to give, and I think that he'll record a fair few points moving forward. So, Mbeumo is your pick this week for Game Week 3. Thank you very much for watching, and make sure to comment down below what were your key takeaways from Game Week 2. We'd love to read your thoughts, and we'll get back to everyone that comments down below. Please remember to like and subscribe the video if you enjoyed, and we'll be back next week with another 5 things that we learned after Game Week 3.